So today I'm stressing a little bit about how much I need to read and how little time I have. So I'm going to get right into it and hopefully I can make it through. So today is section 7 of the Pocket Guide for Lactation Management. So, section 7, breastfeeding management issues. When to breastfeed, feeding frequency. When fed responsively, it's difficult to predict how many times a day a breastfed baby will be fed. Some families wish they could know how long their baby can go between feedings. There are several factors that come into play when determining a range in feeding frequency for a breastfed baby. The amount of storage capacity in breast varies from person to person. This term refers to the amount of milk that can accumulate before the growing fullness signals the mammary cells to make less milk. It is possible that more milk is transferred to the baby from a breast with greater storage capacity. The right breast has been shown to usually have greater storage capacity than the left, although the amount of difference varies. Babies have a range of skill in latching and transferring milk. The more opportunities the baby has to practice breastfeeding, the more skill he or she will develop. Calorically deprived babies are sleepy and apathetic feeders. Sometimes a sleepy, poorly nourished, calorically deprived baby can be mistaken for a contented baby. Another determinant is the baby's stomach capacity, which also varies among individuals and increases over time. Breast milk is perfect for the human baby. It is very easy to digest. That means that breast milk needs to be fed more frequently than non human foods such as formula. Crying babies may shut down at the breast and look as if they are asleep when they have actually given up. Newborn breastfed babies need to nurse 10 to 12 times a day. Many people have come to think of their baby crying as a signal to begin a breastfeeding. Crying is actually a very late feeding signal. By the time babies cry, they have often become disorganized and do not feed as well. Feeding cues. Feeding cues are signs that the baby is in a state that is favorable to feeding. These signs begin during periods of active sleep, identified by the presence of rapid eye movement in the baby. During sleep cycles, full term newborns move into REM about every 20 to 30 minutes. This is the first feeding cue. As the baby becomes hungry and more awake, the later feeding cues become more obvious. The baby begins to bring his or her fist to the mouth, to seek food with the lips, tongue, and head, to smack the lips or extend the tongue, and so on. Feeding cues include rooting, turning the head, especially with searching movements of the mouth, as in Figure 7.1, increasing alertness, especially REM under closed eyelids, as in Figure 7.2, flexing the legs and arms, as in Figure 7.3, attempting to bring a hand to the mouth, as in Figure 7.4, sucking on a fist or finger, mouthing motions of the lips and tongue, as in Figure 7.4. So here are the images of the feeding cues. Figure 7.1, subtle body motions are a feeding cue. Figure 7.2, rapid eye movement is a feeding cue. And 7.3, body motions, including flexing of the arms and legs, are feeding cues. In Figure 7.4, putting the hand near or in the mouth is a feeding cue. Crying is considered a late feeding cue because it does not usually begin in intact full-term babies until more subtle cues have failed to elicit the parent's attention. Less mature and more disorganized babies may pass quickly from the state of deep sleep, characterized by no REM, to crying in a relatively short period of time, and so the intervening cues, rooting, mouthing, moving the hand to the mouth, etc., may be missed if the baby is not nearby. Skin-to-skin holding can help babies with motor state maturation. A baby who is showing subtle feeding cues should be held skin-to-skin between feedings. If feeding cues are not observed after careful observation, an urgent comprehensive pediatric exam should be performed. Expected weight gain in the breastfed baby. After an initial weight loss of 7% or less, adequately nourished breastfed babies should have no further body weight loss after day 5. After that, exclusively breastfed babies should gain 1 ounce or more a day, a more rapid gain in the early months than is shown by the average baby on older standardized growth charts. That's because the Standard National Center for Health Statistics (NCHS) charts were developed using the combined growth averages of formula fed, mixed fed, and breastfed babies. We now know that when only breastfed babies' weights are considered, they gain in a different pattern, growing more rapidly in the early months. At about 6 months, breastfed babies should begin eating solid foods. During the second half of the first year, breastfed babies, even if well fed, gain more slowly than formula fed babies. The WHO growth curves should be used to monitor the growth of all children younger than 24 months, regardless of feeding method, and that's in Appendix Y. Weight loss in the newborn. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics AAP 2012, weight loss in the newborn should be no more than 7% from birth weight, and weight loss should stop by day 5, after which time the newborn should gain weight. If a breastfeeding newborn has lost more than 7% of his or her birth weight, there should be prompt and intensive evaluation of breastfeeding. Interventions to correct problems and improve milk production and transfer should be initiated at 7% weight loss, along with careful follow-up. If breastfeeding problems cannot be identified and promptly corrected, ensure adequate nutrition for the baby with the mother's express milk, donor milk from a designated or appropriately licensed milk bank, or an appropriate breast milk substitute as directed by the pediatric care provider. Insufficient milk. One of the critical issues surrounding the insufficient milk syndrome for clinicians is whether it is an actual problem of not enough milk or a perceived problem of not enough milk. Some families believe that colostrum is low in quantity and not sufficient for the baby. They may even want to start formula right away, even though there are plans to breastfeed later when there is a more abundant supply. This is a perceived problem of insufficient milk. Colostrum is the ideal milk for newborn babies. It is rightly called newborn milk. Colostrum is high in antibodies and other components that begin to protect the baby from pathogens. It is best that the baby has many opportunities to learn to breastfeed before the time of abundant milk. One might naively think that a fussy baby is a hungry baby and that a quiet baby is a full and content baby. Within the range of normal, this may hold true, but underfed, calorically deprived babies begin to conserve energy, cry less, have difficulty feeding, and sleep more. Unfortunately, this behavior may serve to reinforce the behavior of further decreasing feeds. As the baby continues to be calorically deprived, the suck may weaken, further diminishing the stimulus required by the breast to continue producing an adequate supply of milk. This is how an adequate milk supply may become lower and lower as time goes on and the baby becomes more and more calorically deprived. Sometimes insufficient milk is reported as a result of the amount expressed when pumping. The amount of milk expressed is not a direct indicator of how much is available in the breast. Typically, healthy term babies are more efficient at triggering milk flow than pumps. In this case, some ideas to consider include: start with hand expression. Studies show that combining hand expression and pumping increases milk yield when compared with pumping alone, and may also increase caloric content of the milk collected. Assessing expression with a pump. Are both sides being pumped at the same time? This is optimal. Is the pump missing parts or not working properly? Is the flange too tight? This must be assessed while observing a pumping session, because the nipple expands in the pump flange as it does in the baby's mouth. In many cases, a larger flange will allow the nipple and the ducts to expand sufficiently. If the nipple does not expand and more freely inside the flange, that's a sign that the flange is probably too small. Is the flange too large? In this case, a great deal of breast tissue is pulled in and out of the flange, sometimes causing the nipple to rub or bump against the end of the tunnel, causing pain and ineffective milk expression. Will the use of guided imagery while expressing milk increase the amount of milk collected? With guided imagery, one listens to audio recording of a progressive relaxation, imagining the ocean or waterfall of milk while expressing milk. Does power pumping increase the amount of collected after a day or two? Instead of pumping for 15 minutes straight, for example, power pumping is pumping for a few minutes, stopping for a few minutes, then repeating. This may take longer than 15 minutes. Is more milk collected with the pump flange of a different shape? The ducts are right behind the nipple, so some flanges decrease the milk flow the same way a baby with a clenched mouth does. Would a different style of pump make a difference? Many times there is a perception of not enough milk when there is actually an adequate milk supply. Assessing the baby's growth using an appropriate growth chart or, if appropriate, calculating test weights may be helpful in affirming the baby's adequate growth. Maternal reasons for inadequate milk supply. Many maternal reasons have been reported for an actual inadequate milk supply as demonstrated by poor weight gain in the baby. If the problem is inadequate pumped or expressed milk, please see the section on milk collection and storage. Consider inadequate breast stimulation, possible causes, inverted nipples that do not evert when stimulated, use of nipple shield without additional milk expression, etc. Infrequent breastfeeding, scheduled feedings, use of formula or pacifiers to increase the time between feedings, etc. Inadequate milk removal resulting in engorgement. Inadequate hormone stimulation due to slow feeding by the baby, longer than 20 minutes or so. Suboptimal hormone balance, retained placental fragments, hyperthyroidism, hyperthyroidism, Sheehan syndrome, pituitary infarct, insulin, a diagnosis of insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus, may be related to the abundant milk supply. Lactogenesis 2, coming days later than in those without diabetes. Theta lutein cyst or polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. Smoking. Cutting down on the number of cigarettes a day may quickly increase the production of milk. In all cases, babies should be protected from secondhand smoke, and smoking should be discouraged, although breastfeeding should not be discouraged among smokers. Use of a nipple shield. Breast injury impacting the nerves or ducts. Injury to the spine in the location where the nerves that innervate the breast are located, thoracic nerves T1 through T6. Congenital breast anomalies. Discrepancy in the size between an individual's breasts, which may be congenital or caused by injury or surgery, also known as asymmetric breasts. Breast surgery. Certain drugs. Known drugs with a negative effect on milk production include pseudoephedrine, corticosteroids. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a medical provider. I'm a doula. So the pronunciation is not perfect. Corticosteroids, early administration of hormonal birth control drugs, and high doses of vitamin B6. New pregnancy. Maternal depression. See tool for identifying women at risk for mood disorders in Appendix S. Okay. Not related to decreased milk production. Fluid intake. Encourage drinking to thirst. Drinking beyond thirst will not make more milk. That's a big one. Physical labor, stress. Those who are breastfeeding are likely to experience less stress than those who are formula feeding. Fatigue. Being very tired without an underlying physical cause such as those listed, anemia, thyroid problems, etc., is not related to inadequate production of milk. Diet. Being malnourished does not lead to production of inadequate or poor quality milk. Diet. Human milk that has been collected and studied all over the world shows that even when people eat very different diets from each other, the milk is remarkably similar. A balanced diet every day is not needed to make good milk or enough milk. In fact, in cases of starvation and famine, the milk is virtually identical to that of women who are well nourished and have been well nourished for their whole lives. However, well-nourished individuals who breastfeed have been found to play with their babies more than those who are not well-nourished, breastfeed exclusively for longer periods than those who are not well-nourished. Because of maternal physiologic changes and the use of maternal fat stores, fewer than 500 additional calories a day are probably all that is needed while breastfeeding. Vegans or those who have had bariatric surgery may require additional vitamin B12, while breastfeeding, individuals should be encouraged to eat well for their own well-being, not with the idea that dietary choices will affect their breast milk on a day-to-day basis. Dietary choices when breastfeeding. Convey the flavors of the culture to the baby by flavoring breast milk. Spicy and gassy foods should only be excluded on a case-by-case basis, not as a general rule. Babies seem to prefer flavored milk. In a research study, they nursed almost twice as long when garlic flavored the milk. Babies seem to get used to the flavors in the maternal diet by swallowing amniotic fluid, which, like breast milk, takes on food flavors. Chocolate, coffee, tea, and diet sodas with caffeine can be enjoyed in moderation. The U.S. CDC states that the safest option is to avoid alcohol, but notes that there is no known harm in consuming up to one standard alcoholic drink per day, especially when not nursing the baby again for at least 2 hours. I'm going to read that again. The U.S. CDC states that the safest option is to avoid alcohol, but notes that there is no known harm in consuming up to one standard alcoholic drink per day, especially when not nursing the baby again for at least 2 hours. There's no need to pump and dump. Colicky breastfed babies may be reacting to cow's milk whey in the maternal diet. I'm going to go back and revisit that because there's a lot of controversy around that. Colicky breastfed babies may be reacting to cow's milk whey in the maternal diet. It may take 7 days to 2 weeks of eliminating liquid cow's milk from the diet before the milk is free of the substance. There have been reported individual cases of other foods in the maternal diet causing reactions, eczema, proctocolitis, in the baby. Implicated foods include cow's milk, soy, eggs, wheat, and fish eaten singularly or in combination. Baby gaining too fast, too much. After a small weight loss in the first few days after birth, exclusively breastfed babies are expected to gain about 1 ounce or more a day. Breastfed babies, especially exclusively breastfed babies, gain weight more rapidly in the early months and less rapidly after 4 to 6 months, compared with the average baby according to older growth charts. Older charts show the combined growth averages of formula-fed, mixed-fed, and breastfed babies. The WHO growth curves are now used to assess growth of all children under 24 months of age. However, some breastfed babies gain much more than expected, a pound or more a week, for example, for the first 8 to 12 weeks. In the second half of the first year, they gain less rapidly, even after starting solids. When rapidly gaining exclusively breastfed babies are compared with other exclusively breastfed babies, their growth may not seem so rapid, and the fall off of their growth rate in the second half of the first year is found to be quite typical. Growth charts for exclusively breastfed babies are now available via the WHO. Questions to ask. Is the rapidly gaining baby unhappy or unsettled after nursing? Is there a problem with sore nipples or recurrent mastitis? Are the nursing sessions difficult with the baby pulling on and off the breast? Does the baby have multiple large stools a day? The stools often come out of the diaper and onto the clothes. Are some of the stools shiny and greenish? If the answer is yes to 2 or more of these questions, the issue could be a condition called oversupply, where there is more milk than the baby can comfortably handle. The issue is not the weight gain, and that should be made clear. The issue is that the volume of milk and the speed of transit through the baby's GI system is not comfortable for the baby, and the baby is compensating by clamping down on the nipple during feeding to slow the flow of milk. What to do about it? Work to achieve a posture where the baby is able to move his or her head freely when the flow of milk is too great or fast to handle, such as reclining or semi-reclining with the baby's body supported chest to breast. In this posture, also known as the Australian hold, the baby no longer has to work against the milk flow. Suggest nursing on only one breast at each feeding to allow a small amount of breast compression to tamp back the supply. A firm bra may also help. Care must be taken to avoid too much pressure because that could foster mastitis. Suggest using only one breast for 2 or more feedings in a row. This is referred to as block feeding. Ask if instead of decreasing the milk supply using compression, maybe a solution is to collect the extra milk and donate to a milk bank. See Appendix Y for donation information. In our experience, oversupply is often overlooked because fear of inadequate amounts of milk pervades our collective consciousness. The issue of oversupply is complicated by some of the rules that are given about breastfeeding, such as nurse on each breast for 15 minutes. In this case, there is abundant milk and the baby is often adept at transferring it. These babies may take an extraordinary amount of milk in a short time. One can confirm that oversupply is the issue by doing before and after weighs, Appendix E. Weights taken before and after nursing with a digital scale accurate to 2 grams would show rapid transfer of more than expected amounts of milk at the breast in a shorter than expected amount of time, for example 3 ounces in 5 minutes, when the issue is oversupply. See Appendix G for estimates of daily milk requirements. Working and breastfeeding. Working and breastfeeding have coexisted since the beginning of time. The difference today is that families are expected to be separated from their baby when the adults work outside the home. It is the separation, not the physical act of working, that complicates breastfeeding. Working plans. The choice to breastfeed seems to be made independently of whether or not there was a plan for working outside of the home during the first year after the baby is born. Expecting to work in the first year after the baby's birth does not significantly impact whether or not breastfeeding is initiated. The timing of returning to work is closely linked to ending breastfeeding. Research indicates that workplace support is underestimated during pregnancy. The following strategies have been described as being used to continue breastfeeding in the first month of work, presented from most to least prevalent. Express and save milk collected to be fed to the baby later. Keep the baby at work and nurse during the workday. Neither pump nor feed during the workday. Go to the baby to nurse during the workday. Have the baby brought to the workplace to feed during the workday. Express and discard milk collected. Different strategies for combining breastfeeding and work produce significantly different breastfeeding outcomes. Strategies that include feeding directly at the breast during the day or expressing and feeding directly during the day have been shown to be correlated with a longer breastfeeding duration compared to expressing only. Neither expressing nor feeding during the day is associated with the shortest duration of continued human milk feeding. It takes less than an hour, distributed in a couple of sessions, to collect milk during a typical workday separation. The 2010 U.S. Healthcare Reform Bill included an amendment to Section 7 of the Fair Labor Standards Act requiring employers of more than 50 employees to provide reasonable break time for an employee to express breast milk for her nursing child for 1 year after the child's birth each time such employee has the need to express the milk. To provide a private place other than a bathroom. Companies sponsor lactation programs. Services may include classes on benefits of breastfeeding, services of a lactation care provider, and private space in the workplace with equipment for pumping. Strategies for supporting breastfeeding when there is a separation due to return to work or school. Focus on getting breastfeeding off to the best possible start in the first week after the birth of the baby. Explore the parents' options regarding the baby. Explore the parents' options regarding the strategies identified previously. For example, can the baby come to work, at least in the short term? Is it possible to negotiate working part-time at first, increasing the full-time gradually, or work some hours weekly from the home? Assure that there is community support available for families who are separated because of work or school. Save the tips for the appropriate time, 2 to 3 weeks before return to work. Need to know versus nice to know. Become familiar with available resources. Download the business case for breastfeeding from the Health Resources and Services Administration Office of Women's Health, HRSA.gov. This package contains sample forms and resources for employers and employees. Sleeping through the night. Newborn babies need to feed around the clock, whether they are breastfed or not. Sleeping through the night means a stretch of 5 to 6 hours. It is not realistic to expect babies to sleep more than 3 hours in a row at night until they weigh at least 10 pounds or around 2 months of age. Babies will continue to awaken at night if they are not adequately fed during the daytime and evening. Although patterns vary from baby to baby after the early weeks, many babies tank up by increasing nursing frequency in the late afternoon and throughout the evening. Families report that this seems to be in anticipation of sleeping for a longer stretch, up to 6 hours at night. If the baby's need for frequent daytime and evening feedings is not met, the baby may continue to awaken frequently to nurse at night. A baby who is not gaining well must be fed frequently at night too. Having the baby sleeping in close proximity to the parent may help them respond to subtle nighttime feeding cues. AAP 2012. Take a drink. Our motto is daytime interventions work best for nighttime problems. Babies who have lots of naps and sleepy times during the day are less likely to sleep for longer stretches at night. Babies learn to self-regulate sleeping, eating, and crying during the first months. Every baby is different. High-quality randomized control trials, RCTs, have demonstrated that behavioral intervention programs, baby training programs that claim to improve sleep, not only fail to help, but may actually increase parental stress and baby crying. Babies older than 6 months who have been sleeping through the night may start waking during the night again to nurse. Sometimes this is because of teething discomfort. Cold teethers can be very helpful in soothing sore gums. Sometimes this waking is because the baby is too busy during the day to get in the nursing, calories, and cuddles he or she needs. Paying more attention to daytime feeding, snacks, and cuddles may help the baby sleep longer at night. Sleeping in close proximity. Babies, especially newborn babies, are safest when they sleep in close proximity to their parents. Parents will hear the baby and be awakened by quiet sounds and movements. When the baby is close to the parents, synchrony of breathing and sleep cycles seems to develop. Breastfeeding works best when the dyad are close together. Close proximity means that the baby shares a room with his or her parents for at least the first 6 months, as this helps with breastfeeding and protects babies against SIDS. Although there's an article on SIDS, a new article that says that SIDS is may be a factor of genetics, and so certain babies who died from SIDS, they had some sort of genetic defect. I read that in an article and I saved it. Can't remember if it was in the New York Times or elsewhere, but it was a new finding. I think it came out last year about SIDS and what we know about SIDS. Adult beds are not designed with baby safety in mind. Babies can suffocate and die if they get trapped or wedged in the bed or if an adult lies on them. The safest place for a baby to sleep is next to the parental bed on his or her back. Sidecar sleepers, bassinets, and cribs can be placed next to the parental bed. Parents who wish to sleep with the baby in their bed should carefully consider whether they can do so safely. Adult beds are not designed for babies, nor are the fluffy pillows, blankets, and duvets often found in adult beds. Couches, chairs, and recliners are not safe choices for sleeping with babies either. See resources from BASIS and the U.S. National Institutes of Health on safer sleep environments, Appendix Y. And that is the end of Section 7. I had to power through that because I have a lot to do today, so I hope that this was helpful, and I will see you next time.